I am grateful and honored to be your guide and host as we explore into the glorious wilds of Bluefeather's wilderness. In over 60 years of being a self-proclaimed wilderness wanderer, I have photographed a collection of images that will amaze and delight you, and I am sure will whet your appetite and appreciation for the uncomparable beauty and majesty of our Divine Mother in nature. I call her God's wife, and as we treat God's wife, so does Creator treat us. We are all here to expand the borders of God's infinite kingdom, and it is now my pleasure and privilege to expand your awareness of how beautiful and magnificent is our wondrous Divine Mother in nature, and to be reverent and respectful in her sublime presence. The peace and beauty of wild places has a cleansing and healing effect upon all who would enter into its powerful domain. And the longer one stays, the purer one becomes. I will talk about this later when we get into mountaineering and canoeing. The great majority of these images will have no narration and will be accompanied by Nicholas Carter and his magical harp. Welcome now to a wilderness adventure like none other. Welcome to Bluefeather's Wilderness in this celebration of wildness. I could talk for a half an hour on every one of these pictures because every one of them is totally unique. Everything was unique about it. I want to have them up long enough where the people's got a chance to look all around. They're not just glancing at the main, what draws their eye in there. They're looking at the trees in the background or whatever. I would like them to really get absorbed into the image like that. So I've never said this really before, but I'd like them to imagine that they were John Bluefeather standing there with the camera. Actually, you were there taking that shot, and then you put the camera away, and then you're canoeing or camping or whatever right in this particular spot. I believe the biggest pull or draw to deep wilderness is the uncomparable purity that's back there. Everything is so pure and so godlike, and it's like a merging of it's being one. It's like the drop of rain falls into the ocean. When you're back there, you can open yourself up to be one. The elemental spirits come in and you're communicating one-on-one with Creator. I guess that's what I like about it. It's like God is right there. God is the tree. God is the little sparrow that flits in the brush underneath it. You become immersed and it resonates with the wild part of myself. So what I'm trying to do is to allow the man on the street to be where I'm at without having to care about what kind of shoes he's got and if he has a good pack sack or not. So I'm doing all the legwork, you might say. I'm the one that's canoeing back there. I'm the one that's climbing the mountains. And I just want people to see how magnificent and beautiful the wilderness is. And so that's what I like to share with people is the uniqueness of these wilderness images. There's like none other in the whole world. There's no images like the images that are here in Bluefeather's Wilderness. Bluefeather's Wilderness. The purity of wildness strips unreality from all who would venture into its powerful domain. And the longer one stays, the purer one becomes. When solo canoeing in the remote wilds of the Yukon or Alaska for a month or more, one's earthy civilized consciousness begins to slip away unnoticed as a more powerful and expansive realm of reasoning takes its place. Even as a youth fishing the streams and lakes of western Washington, to climbing peaks and canoeing in Alaska and Canada, it seems I have always had this need to explore what I like to call the deep wilderness. And even more exciting, was when I discovered an unexplored deep wilderness within myself. I equate it to the caterpillar, who in reality is a butterfly. We humans must awaken to the fact that we are cosmic beings encased in a mortal form that must be loosened and shed before our butterfly is allowed to fly free. Hopefully these poems and photos will help you to realize that you are more than meets the eye and will entice you to explore into your own deep wilderness. This is a beautiful Elfin Cove Sports Fishing Lodge. He later changed it to Elfin Cove Lodge. Actually, when I was canoeing from Juneau to the outer coast of Glacier Bay to White Sulphur Hot Springs, where I was going to spend the winter, and about 100 miles into it, I paddled right into this little cove right here, Elfin Cove, Alaska. And to my amazement, there was a friend standing on the dock who I played basketball with in Seattle 20 years earlier. And he invited me to come in and spend a few days in his lodge. And the Sulphur Hot Springs that I was going to was about another 40 miles down the coast. Well, after about 2 days, he saw that I was fairly sane and invited me to spend the winter at his lodge as he was going south to catch fishermen for his chartering fishing business. Great and wonderful for me because actually that was the first of 12 winters that I spent there as the caretaker of Elfin Cove Lodge. And Dennis called me Captain Castle Watch. I'd read all day. I'd spend a lot of time by myself getting into the master's readings and so forth like that. And so it was a great time for transformation for me because I was a pretty earthy guy when I paddled in there. And when I left 12 winters later, I felt like I was a fairly illumined fellow. And so this was a great moment in my life, and I'm just grateful to the masters for setting me up with so much alone time, all one time. But many trips we would take guests over, 3 and 4 guests, and put them on these wild rivers, and they would actually fly fish with barbless hooks and a catch and release program. But it was a high point in their whole stay at Elfin Cove Lodge was to be over here in this beautiful seclusion river. I was what they call bear watch. So I would check all the sandbars and all the sign to see if there was recent bear activity there or not and see if it was safe. And if it was safe, would motion, and then the rest, the people would come off. And then I would position myself between the fishermen and the timber there where any bear action would come out. And so it really was a great deal for me. As it was my job, I got to fly out wherever they went fishing, I got to go. And besides, the fishermen were able to fish comfortably knowing that their back was covered by a bear watch. We had to have a permit to be here, and Dennis had one. And so, yeah, my friend, unfortunately, he passed away about a year ago. And I can actually say I haven't missed a lot of people that have made their transition in this life, but this guy right here, Dennis, was one guy that I really actually missed. I missed being around him. I missed the fact that the guy loved me. And the guy trusted me, and the guy left me with his boats. I was his representative for 6 months of the year. And I miss having somebody that has that much trust in me. There are different ways to get around in Alaska, and that's what I'd like to make this little segment on, is the different ways that people get around in Alaska, and especially Southeast Alaska. And fishing is big time here. Down south farther in Alaska, still on the Panhandle, logging is the king down there. But up here, fishing is the big deal. And this is a crab boat, the Martina, from Petersburg. And I actually got an enlargement of this picture, 5x7 and an 8x10 of another angle I had of it, and sent it to the guy in Petersburg. And he got it and sent me back a letter that said if I'm ever down there, that he would take me out to dinner and the whole bit, man. That was the best shot he ever had of his boat. And he had the boat for 12 years. So this is one of the ways you get around up in Alaska is the fishing boats, okay? Another way, this beautiful ferry was the vehicle that I first came up on in February 9th in 1974 to Alaska. It's a 3-day ferry trip from Seattle, Washington to Juneau, Alaska, And it's just an amazing, amazing way to get acclimatized to Alaska. And you can see way up in the top in the back where the lights are, that's the solarium. You find a beach chair up there and you put your pad and your sleeping bag on it and you grab a little space and you spend 3 days there. That was in 1974, and I have since been up and down on the ferries from Washington to Alaska at least 20 times. It's a great way to get to Alaska, and probably the cheapest too. Cruise ships are a big deal in Alaska. This is a big cruise ship leaving Skagway, Alaska. Skagway, Alaska is a wild, wild place. It's the end of the ferry line, actually, and it's where I took off on my canoe adventures. Cruise ships are a big deal in Alaska. This boat here probably has 1,000 people on it. A real boon for Skagway itself, as all these people visit the shops and so forth like that. Planes are an indispensable link to the mainland. This plane here now is a passenger plane, Beaver, coming in from Juneau, about 100 miles to the east. And it also brings out the mail once a day, except on Sundays. And if you want to go to town, this is the way to go. You make a reservation and you fly to Juneau like that. This is a turbojet. This was a really big one they had for lodges when they had 12, 15 people coming out from Juneau to these lodges like that. They would bring these great big super props. They were really a sight and sound to see when these guys took off, man. Wow, they were really something. Yeah, through all of this, I've been trying to impart the different ways that people get around in Alaska and the North Country like that. My favorite of all going into the wilderness is the canoe. One of the two headwater lakes of the mighty Yukon River. This lake goes all the way down here 62 miles and flows into 2 Mile River and then ties into Marsh Lake. And then Atlin Lake flows into Marsh Lake, and the mighty Yukon River, there it goes. It's 2,000 miles long. A canoe is the classiest way to be in the wilderness. I mean, it's the most elegant way to be into the wilderness is in a canoe, and especially a cedar canoe. I've actually only had 2 canoes. One's the Bluefeather, and then the other one, Wilderness Prince. They both made cedar. And boy, once you've had cedar, man, you know, the rest of it is hokey. You're harmonizing with the wilderness. You become part of it, just like the deer. You can't really separate the deer from the wilderness. You're going into a transition, if you will, that will make you inseparable with the wilderness. You can hear the chipmunk. You can hear the birds singing. You can see the sandpipers running along the beach. And so I like to canoe close to the shore. You focus yourself so as soon as you go into the wilderness, you're not some foreign object coming in. You're actually merging. And so you become one when you enter into the wilderness like that. And if you're in there for a month, there's no way that I could ever explain to you how the purity and the grandeur you feel because you're at one with the creation that's out there like that. Oh, it's an amazing experience, an amazing experience. But it's hard to maintain. Like when I'm out there for a month and then I drive 2,000 miles home to Montana from Atlin Lake, British Columbia. In that week or so, 5-6 days, I basically lose that oneness. And so that's the idea is to be able to go do that and then maintain that oneness that you feel out there in wildness. I love this shot here. This is Atlin Lake, which is 85 miles long, the largest natural lake in British Columbia. But I love this shot. It's the shot that I have on my computer screen, and it totally reminds me of some of the greatest days paddling in my whole outdoor career, for sure. Well, this is a wonderful trip that a 6-week, month-and-a-half trip, solo trip I did in Glacier Bay, Alaska. This is a calm, beautiful sea. Port Althorp, right around the corner from where I spent 12 winters in Alaska. This is to show you that you could canoe with your grandmother on a day like today. Now this next shot is the same place during a storm that is coming in from the Gulf of Alaska. This is a day you wouldn't want to be out there canoeing, even with a world champion with you. The people that built the boat told me the two most dangerous things for your canoe are rocks and sunlight. The ultraviolet rays deteriorate the qualities of the canoe, and so beautiful hot day, pretty unglamorous looking, but I'm sure the canoe was very, very happy that I took this extra effort there. Canoe camping is so wonderful, so wonderful. You just pull in there, you got everything you need. The big part about canoeing in Glacier Bay is it's big time brown bear country, big time. And so I find myself liking to camp where it's open, where the bears can see you if need be, and the bears have an alternate route. They can take an alternate way to bypass you, if you will. Of course, all your food has to be in watertight buckets and so forth like that, and odor-proof buckets. And you have to do all the right things. But camping out in the open was the secret that I found in camping in solo in heavy brown bear country. This beautiful camp I had, I was for 4 days there. This is Horseshoe Island in Atlin Lake. Right there, that picture shows it all. Canoe right there with everything in it. And you feel free to explore, walk the shorelines for firewood. It's just an amazing, amazing experience. Probably the most peaceful and wonder-filled, beauty-filled days and months of my life were wilderness canoeing. On my 6-week solo trip in Glacier Bay, I met this group at a campground, and the fellow who was the leader remembered hearing my name, that I was a wilderness guy from Elfin Cove. And so he invited me to join their group, about a dozen people. But he told me because of the insurance deals like that I had to stay a few hundred yards behind him, which was no problem. Doing that, I got to be able to take photographs of these people. But I paddled with him for 2 weeks, and I learned a lot. The guy was a scientist, and I got to tag along with the class, and it was a wonderful experience. These are Klepper canoes from Germany. They are canvas and wood, and they fold up. And these people folded these canoes up, and they put them in a float plane that picked them up, and they took off and went back, and I kept on going for another 3 weeks. Magnificent place, man. John Hopkins Inlet in Glacier Bay. This is a memorable shot because I just had come out into the Gulf of Alaska on probably the wildest paddle of my whole 40 years of paddling. This was the wildest, most dangerous paddle I just came out of spending 10 days at Green Top Harbor in a Forest Service cabin and into the Gulf of Alaska. And now I was just coming out and going around the corner into the calm waters of Lisiansky Inlet. And my nephew was with me. And I'm so grateful that he took this great shot, because it kind of shows a little bit of how wild it was. In Glacier Bay now, this was amazing. In John Hopkins Inlet, there was icebergs all around, as you can see. And there was hundreds, absolutely hundreds of these harbor seals were calving just like this young one was. And they were all making this incredible sound. This happens all the time. We did some research on it because I took a picture. I didn't even know what it was. And we come to find out this is a tanner crab molting. And they don't molt until they're 7 years old, and then they molt every year after that. My friend, lodge owner friend, took this into the game department in Juneau, Alaska, and the biologist told him that you could stand on every beach in Alaska for a summer and never see this. It happens all the time, but it always happens underwater. This particular one got caught with the tide going out. And I happened to be walking along and got this once-in-a-lifetime shot for sure. Hey, how do you like to be canoeing along and see this guy come up right beside you, man? It was a pretty amazing experience. But by that time, you're one. You're not some separate entity out there canoeing. By the time this humpback whale showed up beside me here, I was just as one with the universe as this whale was. And so it wasn't really a shock at all. It was like a thank you. It was like the universe was thanking me for having peaceful and reverent thoughts while in the beauties of Mother Nature. Here we are starting our climb of Mount Adams, the second highest peak in Washington at 12,306. And in the background is Mount St. Helens before it erupted in 1980. This was real early in the morning, and this is an excellent shot of a year's worth of glacier. You can see in the middle there where the brown is. Eventually the top, the gray here, is going to be looking like that too towards the end of the summer. And then in winter when the snow starts coming again, you'll get it all white again. So that's a really interesting shot of 1 year's worth of glacier snow and Mount Rainier in the background. Here's a little farther up, my buddy jumping a crevasse on the way up Adams Glacier. Our great summit shot here on top of Mount Adams, and Mount St. Helens looking its glorious best. Now this next shot is going to be from Mount St. Helens looking back at Mount Adams. Soon after this shot was taken, the wind was blowing so heavy that we decided to go over the leeward side of the summit, and we actually took our ice axes and each dug out a little level platform where we could actually have our lunch. And while we were having our lunch there, my rope partner, his pack slipped off and started sliding down the mountain. And George, who was below us, looked up and saw it, and he ran out there quick with his crampons and snared it as it was going by with his ice axe. But in the meantime, he actually had a little collision right there, and his crampons got stuck and flipped him, and basically he broke his ankle. And so here, this shot now is we're getting ready to slide him down the mountain. We had to do it in short, like 60, 70 foot time, like right there. I'm there with the orange pack, and I got my ice axe in with the rope around him, and we'll slide him down, and one of our friends would be with him all the way down. And then when he would get down to where the rope ran out, he would put his ice axe in and then wrap a rope around it. And then I would come down and leapfrog him and go down below him and wait for the... Anyway, it was interesting. We were on the summit at 7:30 in the morning. We started at 2:30 with headlamps. It took us till 1 o'clock in the morning to actually get George safely down to the car. It was a very wild adventure, and I'm sure even wilder for our friend George.